Well, good afternoon and welcome to this special hybrid meeting of the Scrutiny and Audit Committee. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I have agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the Council's public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. Item 1, apologies and substitutes.
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies from Councillors Beattie, Cowdy and Melville with no substitutes.
Okay, thank you. And declarations of interest and statements of transparency. Okay, I wasn't expecting any, there are none. Okay, we'll move on to the audit. Item 3, Angus Council Annual Accounts 24-25 and Annual Audit Report to members. And I'll hand over to the Director of Finance, Mr. Lorimer.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, members. Just checking the time there. So this report presents the 24-25 annual accounts for the Council following completion of the external audit process, along with the external auditor's report to elected members and the Controller of Audit on the audit of those accounts and the Council's wider governance and best value arrangements. Now, while there were a number of issues identified in the draft accounts, which have now been corrected following the audit, and some lessons for us to learn on those, I do want to commend the work of my team in preparing the accounts and supporting the audit process. We've had extra challenges this year with the departure of a number of experienced officers, as well as the additional work required to introduce significant new accounting standards in IFRS 16. And even in relation to the much smaller task of preparing the charities accounts, new staff have picked that up for the first time this year. So I'm pleased to see an unqualified audit opinion on those two. Pauline Gillan, who's the Audit Director with Audit Scotland and the person responsible for our audit, is going to take the committee through her report, but I think we can be pleased that the key messages from the report are almost exclusively positive and see a continuation of the Council's good practice and strong processes in a number of areas. That's all I will say, Convener, by way of introduction. I was going to hand over to Pauline, but I'm obviously available for questions once later in the meeting.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Ian. Over to Pauline Gillan then, and we await your report. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I will go through the report for the Council, and then afterwards I'll hand over to Mark Laird, who's the Senior Manager on the audit, and he's the appointed auditor for the charities, and he'll take you through the report for the charities as a separate audit. So if we just turn to the covering letter for the Council audit, first of all, attaches an appendix to your papers. This letter is addressed to this audit committee as those charged with governance under ISA 260. A couple of things to draw to your attention in this letter. The most important bit of it is at paragraph 1, where I confirm that the audit work is now complete for 24-25 and subject to just some final checks. I expect to be able to give a clean opinion and sign the accounts later today. Couple of things just to go through in the letter. I'm required to bring to your attention any significant findings and key audit matters that have arisen from the audit, and I'll come on to those in a bit more detail when I get to the annual audit report itself. I'm also required to report to you any uncorrected misstatements in the accounts that we identified as part of the audit, where management have made the decision not to make an amendment to the accounts. And you'll see there in paragraph 6, we've said £650,000 of unadjusted misstatements are in the accounts, but there has been a change to that figure, and it is to do with paragraph 11. You'll see in the letter we have a couple of outstanding matters that we required before we could conclude in the audit work. It was just a timing issue, so that the time when we had to issue these papers for committee, we hadn't quite received all the outstanding information, And in the intervening period, we have now received the information from management, and we've identified a further error in the figures that we were provided, amounting to £2.8 million. And it came from an error in a spreadsheet whereby a calculation was out by £2.8 million. So that figure there of the unadjusted errors at paragraph 6 will have an additional £2.8 million. When I go through to the annual audit report itself, I'll just highlight where that would appear in the accounts, in the annual audit report. Once the accounts are signed, we then issue the annual audit report in its final version. So we've still got some time to reflect that last minute change in the annual audit report that will then be finalised and available for publication. So that's just a bit of a complication in this covering letter, which is typically straightforward. The remainder of the letter at Appendix B, we have the letter of representation from the Section 95 officer, prepared under ISA 580, and members will have seen a similar letter in previous years. That will be signed by Section 95 officer at the same time the accounts are signed and provided to me before I sign the accounts. If we turn to the next item here, agenda, is the annual audit report itself. And you'll see that at page 3, it outlines the key messages from the work that the team carried out on the 24-25 audit, and it's separated into findings from the audit of the annual report and accounts themselves, which are right here in front of you today, but also covers the 4 wider code areas that frame public sector audit in Scotland and also best value. So just a couple of things to draw to your attention in the report itself. At Exhibit 1, we repeat for your information the levels of materiality that we've applied to the audit and that's driven the audit work that we've carried out. We have an overall materiality level of £12 million and a reporting threshold of £360,000. And that's the level at which I would be required to bring to your attention any misstatements in the accounts where they exceed that £360,000. ISA 260 requires me to communicate significant findings from the audit and key audit matters, and you'll see that at Exhibit 2. You'll see there that we have 6 matters to bring to your attention that came out of the audit work that we've carried out this year. These are matters that are above that reporting threshold that I mentioned earlier. Out of the 6, 5 of them have required adjustments to the accounts, and the team have gone through the adjustments that have been made by management, and we're content that they've been processed correctly. All the adjustments over the reporting threshold are included in a bit more detail at Appendix 2, so you're able to see exactly where they impact on the accounts. I won't go through the significant findings in too much detail. The first one there relates to some errors in the recognition of income and expenditure in the comprehensive income and expenditure statement, and you can see there the amounts that were involved. The second point is probably where most of the adjustments were required, and it relates to the valuation of council houses at the year end. And you'll see that there are a number of adjustments that management have made. The error that I mentioned to you earlier in relation to the £2.8 million would be included in there. So it's in relation to the valuation of council houses at the year end. At number 3, we've got a misstatement related to right of use assets. As the Director of Finance mentioned earlier, this is the first year of the implementation of a new international financial reporting standard, IFRS 16, and it relates to the recognition of leases in the council's accounts. A lot of work has been done by management to work through those figures. It's quite a complicated change to the accounts this year. So you'll see that we do have one minor error in those calculations, and management have adjusted for that. At number 4, just a number of classification issues relating to property, plant and equipment. So nothing that would impact on the bottom line. It's just some amounts that have been recognised on the wrong line in the property, plant and equipment note in the accounts. Again, management have adjusted for that. Number 5, we have a recommendation there, and it's essentially just to tidy up the fixed asset register. A number of assets there that have a nil book value at the year end, and we just recommend that management undertake an exercise to review the register to make sure to identify if those assets are still in use. and that's included in the action plan at the end of the report. And the final matter is in relation to group consolidation issues. Members may recall that in 23-24 we had some similar issues, and it's to do with the way the group figures have been brought into the main accounts, and there's a number of misstatements that were made there. And again, management have adjusted for those, and we have reiterated the recommendation that we had last year, and continue to hope to see progress in next year's audit. Exhibit 3 of the report just gives a summary of the audit work that we carry out on the Council's group components, and you'll see there the procedures that we carried out and the summary of the work performed, and we've nothing to bring to your attention there other than those items that were mentioned in Exhibit 2. Exhibit 4 has the significant risk of material misstatement that I included in the annual audit plan at the start of the audit. You'll see there we just have one significant risk, and this is a standard risk that we're required to include in all audits, and it relates to the unique position that management have to override financial controls. Middle column outlines the detailed planned audit response that the team carried out during the year. And in the final column, we give an outcome of the work that was performed. And you'll see there that we didn't identify any issues where there may be evidence of management overriding controls. The remainder of the report covers the wider dimension areas and best value. And you'll see there that we make positive comments on financial management and budgeting in year, and recognise the progress that has been made in relation to the change programme, with 82% of planned savings achieved in year. However, we do highlight the need for the Council to continue to identify areas of future service transformation and efficiency. We also highlight effective and appropriate governance arrangements and strong leadership and vision in the Council. The section on best value after that encompasses the conclusions and the work that we've carried out to assess the Council's arrangements for demonstrating best value. And you'll see there that we provide a summary of the findings from the thematic work that we carried out on service transformation, and members received this full paper at last week's committee. And we'll follow up on the recommendations in next year's audit. We also summarise in this section of the report service performance indicators, and we highlight there's a mixed picture of achievement of those. Finally, at the action plan, Appendix 1, you'll see that we have 3 recommendations that I've gone through earlier. One of those is from previous year that we've superseded and raised again for this year. You'll see in the action plan we have management's responses and target dates for achieving those actions. We also include follow-up on 5 recommendations from previous year's audits, and you'll see it's a positive picture there with all of them except for 1 fully implemented. We also include the 7 recommendations for previous best value reviews, and again, good progress there with all but 2 fully implemented. So that was all I wanted to say on the Council Annual Audit Report. I'll maybe pause before I hand over to Mark for the charities, just to take any questions, joined by Mark and Neil, the Senior Auditor in the audit, who'll be happy to assist me with any questions that you have. But just in case I don't get a chance later, just to thank the finance team for all their assistance and helping us concluding the audit in time in line with the timetable. It was quite a lot of work this year, but I think the team would agree that it was quite a smooth process, and we're happy to get to this position in the year where we're able to sign off before our statutory deadline. So thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for the report, and I think I would just offer congratulations to both the internal finance team and also the auditors for having got to this point at this point in the year, which is certainly very good progress, and it was also good to hear that we have a set of accounts that there's no significant issues with. I've got a few questions. I've at least got one elected member with a question. Councillor Bell, on you go.
Thank you very much, Convener, and Pauline, thank you for the report. And I would just like to kind of reiterate what Ian said in terms of his introduction around capacity and the challenges that the team have faced this year. But I wanted to pick up on your comment around transformation, and I wondered if you had any definition or clear idea around what transformation looks like at this stage of our business, if you like, and might that also link into scope around shared services? Is that something that we need to drill into much more deeply? Thanks.
Yes, the transformation piece, the report that came to members last week, it included in it an exhibit that outlines some kind of high level details from the Accounts Commission about what they consider transformation to be and what it should look like. And I think we're probably in the environment now where we're trying to encourage councils to shift the dial on transformation. So it's not just about making small change savings, it's about significant pieces of work to transform service delivery for efficiency and savings in the medium to long term. I think we commented both in the transformation thematic review and in this report about how successful the council's been so far, not just this year but in previous years, in being able to generate savings. And I think it's probably safe to say that the quick wins have already been achieved, and you're moving more into a position where you have to be more ambitious, more innovative in trying to identify those areas where you can transform how you deliver services. And yes, we made a comment in the thematic about trying to make the most of working with partners and sharing services, etc. I think it's safe to say that across the sector, there's not necessarily a huge amount of good examples or good practice in that area, but certainly something we're seeing across the piece, across councils, where that's certainly what councils are trying to achieve and recognise some efficiencies where they can, but certainly not easy.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions? Don't see any hands up at all. Okay, well, Councillor Devine, you.
Thank you, Convener. Polly, you recommended that work starts as well at a suitable time with the skills audit, and I was just wondering if you had any indication of when this might start, because you put a target date of March 26, which isn't that far away for such a big operation. I don't know if it's you to answer the question or somebody else on the call, but it would be helpful to know that. Thank you.
Mr. Lorimer, who's I think indicating he might want to respond to that one, but I think you maybe, if that's okay. Councillor Devine.
Yep, thanks, Convener. Thanks, Councillor Devine, for the question. Yeah, so the recommendation is there. It did relate to the last year's BV thematic work on workforce, and colleagues in HR have updated that in terms of the timescales. I would need to speak to them to get a more full update, but I suspect we will be bringing updates as part of our governance reporting over the course of the next few months, which will provide an update on the progress of these various recommendations, Councillor Devine. So there will be an update on progress with that before we get to the due date as part of our governance reporting. So that might be timely enough, but I'm happy to ask HR colleagues to give you a bit more detail before that, if that would be useful.
Yeah. Yes, it would be. Really, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I do not see any further questions on the council accounts. Okay, we've had a chance to question both the auditor and the finance director on that one. Can we move on to the charity accounts and introduce Mark Laird to give his report?
Yes, thanks, Convener, and good afternoon, everyone. I won't go through everything in detail in terms of the charities audit. Everything's laid out in the same way that it was for the papers that Pauline's just presented. I will highlight a couple of things, but I won't go through in any great detail. Again, just on the first paper, which is the covering letter and the proposed opinion and ISA 580 letter. just to highlight at paragraph 10 in the covering letter that in terms of outstanding matters, again, there was one at the time of drafting the letter for the committee papers in relation to confirmation that trustees have approved the use of the endowment funds to meet the unrestricted fund deficits. Again, just pleased to report that you'll see in the annual report itself that this has been resolved, and that evidence was obtained, and therefore the accounts have been updated as necessary. So moving on to the report itself, again, laid out in exactly the same way as the council one. The one difference you will note is that we don't cover wider scope or best value in relation to the charities audit, given that it's a much smaller and more straightforward audit, and held to slightly different standards than the council audit. It's not required of us to cover those areas. So just a couple of key messages then. Just that the opinions stated in the annual report and financial statements were free from material misstatement, and all the adjustments required to correct the financial statements have been made. So no issues there. So I'll just go straight to the audit issues themselves, which are highlighted in Exhibit 2, which is on page 9. Again, just two issues to highlight to members. First one is the deficit and unrestricted funds, which relates to the point I just mentioned in the covering letter there. So just to again reiterate that evidence has been obtained and resolved, and therefore the accounts have been updated as necessary. The second one, just to do with an overstatement in the unaudited accounts for £14,726. Again, that was corrected in the audited financial statement, so no issue going forward. As I said at the start, I won't go into anything much in more detail. In Exhibit 3, page 11, I'll just outline the one risk that we had identified in our audit plan, which was, again, in relation to fraud caused by management overriding controls. You saw the same one in the council report, and you will see it in all of our audits. It's a statement that, a risk that has to be recognised in all of our audits. But you'll see the planned audit work that we'd carried out set in the plan, the outcome of that work, given that the audit is now concluded, and the conclusion that there was no evidence of fraud caused by management overriding controls. So that concludes the report. So happy again to take any questions on that or the audit itself. Thanks very much.
Okay, elected members, any questions for Mark Laird? I am not seeing any questions at all. Okay, any comments from members? Okay, no comments. Okay, we will move on to the recommendations. Review the contents of Audit Scotland's annual report, covering letter and Appendix A. Review the contents of Audit Scotland's annual report to members, attached to Appendix B. Review the content of Audit Scotland's annual audit reporting covering letter, Appendix C. And review the content of Audit Scotland's annual audit report to members attached at Appendix D for Angus Council charitable funds. And finally, well, V, 5, scrutinise and approve for signature in accordance with the Local Authority Accounts Scotland Regulations 2014, the 24-25 audited annual accounts of Angus Council. And 6, note and the summary of the main movements within Angus Council audited annual accounts, attached at Appendix E, and note the key messages and the 24-25 action plan within the annual audit reports to members for Angus Council and Angus Council charitable funds. So we're essentially noting and reviewing. The 5 is to scrutinise and approve for signature. Are we agreed to do that? Okay, thanks very much indeed. Thanks for your attendance this afternoon, and I wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Can we stop the stream, please?